James Harden dropped 61 points, and the Houston Rockets 111-105 comeback win against the San Antonio Spurs. A lot of people will talk about James Harden being an unstoppable scorer, James Harden being the lead candidate, just give him the MVP trophy. I want to talk about something else in terms of what's going on with James Harden and his playoff resume, his playoff reputation that he's built up to be a choker, to be somebody that you can't depend on in the playoffs. Looking at that game against the San Antonio Spurs is a reflection of James Harden's entire playoff history in terms of being unable to sustain his play in the playoffs. It's not the fact that James Harden is unsustainable in the playoffs. It's the fact that the entire team, the mission, the objective, the strategy is unsustainable in the playoffs. I always thought like, hey, James Harden, he might have a little element of choking or he might just not be able to rise to the occasion. But looking at that game really put things into perspective. In that game, PJ Tucker went 0 for 3 from 3. CP3 went like 0 for 4 from 3. James Harden in the starting lineup. Oh, no. PJ Tucker went 0 for 3. Chris Paul 0 for 4. Eric Gordon went 3 for 9, which is 30%. 33%, which is terrible, basically. It's not that great. The D'Antoni system is predicated on shooting threes, run and gun, rebound outlet. The way that they play is set up for James Harden to always have to take over. And it's not that I don't think he necessarily wants to take over. Even Tracy McGrady was talking about how there are certain games when Tracy goes to watch in his nice penthouse box. When there's certain games he's watching, the Rockets are up 18, 20 points, and James Harden's still playing. I think in essence, the Rockets can't play without Harden. So like they need a consistent dosage of one-on-one play. They need a consistent dosage of big-time clutch three-point shots because the model of basketball that they're playing is unsustainable. There's like no, in terms of like getting really easy baskets, there's no setups for them to get easy baskets, no setups to like work everybody into the offense. It's either you're shooting threes or you can't shoot threes. It just so happens in that game, James Harden went 9 for 13 for 3. He had 61 points, which is huge. But when you look at it, it's kind of like bittersweet. It's like it took 61 for them to get the win. And the other night he had 57 against the Grizzlies and they didn't get the win. So that trend right there is showing you that just to stay competitive, just to stay the head above water, even with all the guys healthy, James Harden needs to have huge games of 40 to 50 to 60 points. And it's just like, how do you sustain that when he's not going to have that single night every night in the playoffs? Nobody's going to have that night in the playoffs. 40 to 60 points every night. Nobody's going to have that night. So where's the balance? And with Houston, there is no balance. One of the key things that you look at in the playoffs is defense and rebounding. Defense, the Houston Rockets are ranked like 21st. Rebounding, the defense, especially defensive rebounding, they're ranked 29th. So not only are you giving up a lot of offensive rebounds, you're not even defending well. So those lead to a lot of putbacks. Those lead to like a lot of rebound to outlet for threes and stuff like that. That will hurt you. It'll punish you. Especially if you get punished on the glass, essentially you're losing that game because the Rockets don't rebound well. So they're not rebounding well. They're shooting about 44 threes a game and shooting a clip of 35%. I don't know if today that's really like what you think is a good percentage. That's not a good percentage. So if you're getting killed on the glass, you're giving offensive rebounds, you're not shooting a high percentage from three, you're not setting yourself up to where James Harden could give you 25 and 10 or 25 and 7 and you guys win games. it's not that James Harden is unsustainable, ladies and gentlemen. The D'Antoni system is just unsustainable. And it's just like when you want to pat him Harden on the back for doing great, but then we want to kill him in the playoffs when he can't get these big numbers. It was never set up for him to get big numbers in the playoffs. It was all of this was set up just to get through the regular season. Because if you look at it, they need Harden to be their bailout plan every single time. So it's just crazy because you're gonna watch this, you're gonna see people give him props about scoring 61, and man, you're gonna forget about all the team's deficiencies. If CP3 is going 0 for 4 from 3, PJ Tucker is going 0 for 3 from 3, Eric Gordon, who's supposed to be a 3-point specialist, is going 3 for 9. Like, if that happens in the playoffs, you're looking at yourself being down 0-2 to some teams. It's not even just the Warriors. Forget the Warriors competing against them. Just think about a Utah Jazz team, or let's just say because the Rockets are on the 3rd seed, let's just say they have to play against the Thunder. And the Thunder don't even shoot that well themselves, but if they could lock you up from 3, you're not winning that game because the Thunder are going to kill you on the glass, especially if you're not a great defensive rebounding team. So I think that Harden really has been getting a bad rap, and it's not necessarily because his play is unsustainable. It's just his play was never set up to coincide with a team that has so many deficiencies. Harden's elevation of play in these clutch moments and these moments that are dire to the team are just a manifestation of the symptoms that's going on with the team, which is all their deficiencies. They're not good defensively. They're not great defensive rebounding team. They don't shoot the 3-point at a really good percentage. So that being said, you take all those deficiencies into the playoffs and expect James Harden to pull out games like he was doing during the regular season where the defense changes. There's more attention and more intention on what teams are doing, how they're going to key in on stuff. It's just unrealistic. It's unrealistic for me to think that James Harden is going to have 61, 57, and 48 in a playoff game like he did in a span of 2 weeks or whatever the case is, like in a playoff series. That's just unrealistic. And I think his teams were just basically set up for him to fail. It was set up for him to fail, but the teams want him to bail them out. So they're saying, like, we're going to do everything in our power not to help you with some of these other things we should be doing. We need you to do all the dancing and all the tap dancing for us to win. And I think that's just highly unfair because the Spurs shot 27% from 3, and they could have scored the last 2 to 3 minutes of the ball game. If they scored maybe 4 points in the ball game or 5 points, Rockets, they probably lose that game. So when you're dealing with a Spurs, that 61 is against a Spurs team. What happens when you play a team that can defend and play just as good defense as you can? So I think we kind of need to stop giving Harden that bad rap, that bad name about not showing up in the playoffs. I think he does show up in the playoffs. It's just you can't expect a guy to go 9 for 13 from 3 for you to win games like that all the time. That's like unrealistic. That's super unrealistic. And I think our expectation of Harden, just because we're seeing it during the regular season, his great play is masking all the deficiencies of the Rockets team. They're not as good as advertised. Like last year, they were like really good. This year, they're just not as good. And it's really taking a toll. Like you can see it when CP3 start a whole bunch of starters are going 0-4 from 3, and only starter that's really hitting threes is James Harden only. You got a problem there, especially when these guys are supposed to be like 3-point specialists, run and gun, and all this other stuff, and they can't hit shots. You have a huge problem, and this 61 is masking that problem. But I'm gonna highlight it for you guys because you need to see this. So if they do make a exit in the playoffs, you can't just say like Harden choked. No, the system choked, and that's where the GM Daryl Morey really has to really evaluate the system that they're running, evaluate the coaching, and possibly make a coaching change. Because D'Antoni's a great coach, but he has to understand you have to make adjustments. You can't continuously do the same thing and expect different results. Because if the Suns couldn't make it to the finals and win the championship, you couldn't do it with the Lakers, couldn't do it with the Knicks. All you run the same system, you still haven't been able to do it. Chances are there's something flawed with your system, and something that needs to change. Hoops Junction, where hoops meets hoopla. Like, comment, subscribe.